What's up, gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to get into how and why I got Mexican residency. But before we do that, make sure to smash the like button. Costs you nothing, means the world to me, and it really helps me out with the algorithm. So with that said, let's get into the topic at hand, and we are going to start with why before the how. And why I did this is we're going to have to go back a couple of years to 2021, 2022, and I think you guys know the global situation that was occurring. And so first and foremost, the reason I was in Mexico at that time is because it was rather open. You could enter the country without proof of, and you could go to bars, nightclubs, what may have you. And really, very little changed about Mexico. It was very, very open. Now, some places did enforce mask policies, while other places weren't so stringent about it. It kind of depended where you were in the country as well as the specific place you were at. Now, as someone who values my freedom above all else, I took notice of this and how they were handling the situation, especially in comparison to a place like Thailand and probably the United States, but I wasn't in the United States during this whole fiasco, so I have no clue how it was handled there. Now, with that said, you get 6 months for the most part upon arrival. Obviously, this situation had extended for quite some time, and so my 6 months was coming to an end. But I had noticed quite a few people in Facebook groups, for example, were mentioning a couple things that were significant. The first thing was they were mentioning that a lot of people weren't getting 180 days anymore. Mexico was getting hip to the game like Thailand, where Thailand noticed people were just doing visa runs and they're like, hey, you can't do that anymore. And so Mexico noticed people were essentially living in Mexico by going to another Latin American country, usually Colombia or something like that, for a week or a month or what may have you, or even going back to the United States and then coming right back and getting another 6 months. And so they were cracking down on this, especially in places like Mexico City and Cancun. And so I was like, okay, good to know. It is what it is, but it's good to know. Then another thing I noticed was a lot of people were starting to get residency in Mexico through something called the regularization program. And this was interesting to me because you could get residency in Mexico without having to go to a consulate in the United States. Now, obviously, I didn't want to go back to the United States because I don't have that thing. And at that time, there was a long wait time for appointments and getting getting all your documents in order and so on and so forth. And frankly, if I go back to the United States, I have to pay more in taxes, but that's not what this video is about. But with all that said, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Especially because I also learned that there was a pathway to Mexican citizenship after getting residency. And so that really started to intrigue me because I really liked the way they handled the situation that was going on in the world. And as someone who values my freedom over almost anything else, I was like, okay, they handled that situation really well. They have a really powerful passport. It started raining, so I had to reposition some stuff. So anyway, like I was saying, really strong passport, and it seemed that freedom was still of some importance to most Mexicans and the Mexican government. So that really interested me. Additionally, I wanted to diversify into a place that had a pathway to citizenship. And so if anything ever happened in the United States or what may have you, I could easily get into Mexico, and I could diversify even more where I keep my money. So I'm not solely relying on the US dollar or United States banks, but I can have money in multiple countries and multiple banks and multiple different currencies. And so that was really, really appealing to me. And so with all that knowledge, I started to look into the regularization program. And what I learned was you had to have been in Mexico at least a couple of times before 2022. And you had to be on an expired FMN, aka a tourist visa. And so you have to overstay. And at that point in time, I did not overstay my visa. And so I was like, okay, I am going to intentionally overstay my visa by, it was either like 1 day or something like that, But then you also had to go to the INM and get an appointment, and oftentimes those appointments were, weeks away, especially at those times. We're going to show up, get our appointment, we're going to be on that expired FMM. Who knows what the repercussions of having an expired FMM is, or are, I should say. And this was going to be the only time I've ever had an expired FMM. So I was like, okay, we are intentionally overstaying this. I have the expired FMM, and I have multiple stamps of entry into Mexico in my passport. And so with all this knowledge, I went through the process. And to make a long story short, I ended up getting 4 years of temporary residency. And then on that 4th year, what I can do, I think within 30 days of renewal, I can switch to permanent residency. And then after a year or two, I don't recall, of permanent residency, then I can apply for Mexican citizenship. Now, here is one thing that I may have done differently. And I don't want to say regret, but this is something I probably should have thought more in depth about at the time, is that if I did go through the traditional route of residency and going to the United States and doing the jump around in the United States in order to do it, I could have went straight to permanent residency. And here is why I kind of wish I did that, because I am taking a bit of a risk. Who knows if the Mexican government is still going to have the same policy in another year and a half or what may have you. Because like I said, this was 2022, we're almost 2025, so I did this almost 3 years ago now. Like I said, it is a risk. They may change that policy where I can't get permanent residency at the end of my 4th year. Now, they haven't changed this policy, but it is a risk that I am taking where I could have just guaranteed myself permanent residency, which is probably a safer bet to do long term, especially as they keep changing the requirements. And oftentimes, these things get much more difficult as time progresses. So that is the one holdup or drawback or regret, I guess you can say, that I have about this. But so far, no harm, no foul, and it hasn't negatively impacted me. But that is how I got residency and why I got residency, so I could ultimately get that Mexican passport and get a step closer to renouncing, most likely, my United States citizenship because of the whole worldwide taxation. One of only a few countries that tax you on your worldwide income, even if you do not stay in the United States for a single minute, second, day of the year. So with all that said, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to get Mexican citizenship or residency for yourself, let me know in the comments down below as well, and I can point you in the general direction of the people that helped me through the process as well. So thank you for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. And as always, peace, much love.